back to the Only Child Talk Show, where we talk about childhood and chasing dreams and all the in-betweens. I want to thank you for watching my last episode about the good times of how my parents raised me growing up. Obviously, there were small snippets of my life, but I'm glad that you were able to enjoy and relate to some of the things that I went through. Today's episode is about some of the hard times, some of the choices that my parents made that affected me negatively. And again, to let you know, all of these things have happened in the past, right? They're gone, they're in the past. They did affect me, but my parents and I have talked through some of these things. We've healed from some of them, and I'm able to share it now. Some of it is very sensitive for me to talk about, and there's just still some trauma when I think back to some of these things, and I think that's okay. I think that's okay to have, and I think it's okay to be able to be in a place where I can share that now. So I'm thankful where I am now, and I'm thankful that I can share with you today. And obviously not all of this is happy times, because when you're growing up, there's so many things that happen in life, and I just want you to know that if you ever went through some of these things that I did or anything related to it and you want to share with me, I would love to hear your stories and your side of things or how it affected you. A lot of these stories is actually more about my dad than my mom. I think because when I was younger, there's lots more stories that stuck with me because my dad wasn't in my life very much. So whenever I do think back to those times, each memory with my dad seems a little bit more bigger in my life. And so I definitely, I don't like to say that I have daddy issues, but I guess I do have daddy issues. And so I hope that as you're listening to my story, some of it is relatable, some of it might not be at all, but I'm here to share it with you, and thank you for listening. My dad was gone a lot as I was a kid, and even growing up as an adult too. He would do this thing where if he is excited about something, then he would want everyone to be excited about something. My dad would do this thing where he would be a little bit extreme. If he's thinking of something, then he would hope that you'd be 100% on board and supportive, and if you were against it, he wouldn't understand why you would ever be against it. That's like a toxic trait of his. And then he also had a lot of anger issues, and I'm sure that stems from a lot of different things, especially pride. And I try to think back about how he grew up and his family situation. He is the youngest of I want to say 6 or 7 siblings. And I'm sure with that comes a lot of, I want to show everybody, I want to show my brothers and my sisters that I am successful, and especially in Korea, it's very competitive. And a lot of my dad's family side are very successful, and they are rich. And I think because he was the only one who moved to America to be able to show them, hey, I'm going to be successful, I think that was a huge factor in the way that he ran his life, and that eventually came to the demise of our family. I mean, there's other things too that is why that happened, which I'll explain in another story one day later. He was a very angry guy, and when he got angry, it was really scary. And so I remember being a kid, we had, like I said, my parents would throw a lot of parties, and these people that we hung out with, they were like our family. We would see them almost every day. They were our neighbors, all these other Korean families, and we went to church together, and we would go over to their houses, and sometimes my parents would fight, and I would watch them fight, I'd hear them fight. I'm scared for my life. I just want to help protect my mom, just natural instinct. I don't know why, because my dad's so scary when he's angry, yelling and throwing things. And I remember one of the families asked me, we went over after school to their house, and after my parents had a fight, and they were curious naturally. Koreans love spreading rumors, they love all that stuff. I remember the mom came over and was like, oh, Sangana, what's been happening at your house? And I think this makes more sense now as an adult. I think naturally I just love to tell stories, and naturally I like to connect with people. So I was very unashamedly explaining what had happened in the house, and I think kids just do that. They have no filter. They don't know what to say and what not to say. So I do remember, I guess I had said, oh, I was just eating ice cream, and then all of a sudden my parents were fighting and like TVs were being thrown across the room. Lots of fighting. Later, I find out why they're fighting, which I'll explain in another story. That was not just a one instance thing. It was multiple times, a lot of times. And as a kid, when parents are fighting, it's like all of your insides are so scared, you just don't know what to do. And all you can do is cry. And then you walk over while it's dead silent because dad has left the house to go cool off or whatever. You come into your parents' room and you just see things all over the floor, and you see your mom, who is not her usual self. It's a really scary thing, and she's just scared and crying, and you've been crying. You go over there, you try to console her as best as you can. We have no clue what's going on, and you don't know if your dad's ever coming back. That fear of where is he? This has never happened before. Fear, and so, yeah, and then you just cry together, holding each other. And then you get through it eventually. You hear the parents' excuses of no, we weren't fighting, we were just talking about things really loudly. All the excuses they give you about when they're fighting. And then you grow older and you understand, of course, fighting is normal, it's natural. And I know some parents, they never fight in front of their kids. They take it outside. They take it somewhere else. They don't take it outside, but I mean they take it into their car or when the kids are asleep to make sure they protect them. But I don't know, is that honest and healthy too? I guess some of it is learning from your parents and seeing how they fight, but also learning that communication is important, but how do they make up? I don't know the answer to that. I wish I had an answer, and I'm not sure what I would do as a parent, if I would actually fight in front of my kids or not. I'm sure there's a bunch of parenting books out there, and if you have an opinion about that, if you have an answer, if you have experience, let me know. But as a child, yeah, it's very traumatizing. It's very scary. Some other things that had happened that were really scary is when my dad had uprooted me from where I lived in Washington in 3rd grade. And this was literally in the middle of 3rd grade. He just one day was like, let's get out of here and move. As my dad was a very angry person, there were times that he would raise his voice after we had moved to California. And they were not in a good place. My parents were not in a good place. And so they still fought a lot in California. And I guess he was on edge about something, but I had this one dictionary. It was an electronic dictionary. I still remember what it looks like. Back then in the 1990s and 2000s, anything clear electronic was so cool and popular, the phones. I had this electronic dictionary, and you could play Hangman on it and find the words and look up the definitions. I loved it. It was so fun. I think I begged my dad for it. It was probably from Costco or something. One day for my homework, I was supposed to look up a definition for something, and I don't know why. He was really frustrated at that. I remember going up to him and asking him what the definition was for a word. He's like, I don't know. And so I went back to my room, and I was sitting there looking at my homework. And then all of a sudden, I do remember him busting through the door. He pointed at my electronic dictionary and was like, what is that? That is your dictionary that I bought you. Why are you not using it for the purpose that you're supposed to use it for? And he was really, really angry for a reason that he should not have been that angry about. Another traumatic thing in my life because of a parent's choice was one day I came back from school and I was in 4th grade. And there was a letter on my desk, and I don't really remember the contents of it very well, but it was written in Korean, and pretty much at the end of it was, I'm so sorry I had to leave, and I love you, or something like that. And so everything else was kind of blurry, but I do remember one day, so my dad had moved out, and he had got his own apartment, 30, 40 minutes away. So my mom drove me to his house one day so that I can visit him for a weekend, and I think I slept over one weekend. And I remember spending time with him in this tiny studio apartment, really dark, a little scary, and spending time with him. And then the next day my mom drove me back home, but as I was driving away, it's a very scary thought to feel like your world just got ripped apart, and everything was very scary at that time in California because everything was new. I think because, you know, as a kid, everything's a little bit more dramatic. You don't know what's going on, you make up your own stories. But I swear, I remember as we were driving away, I heard like a gunshot in his neighborhood. It's probably a car backfiring, but for a kid to like be so scared for her dad already. Yeah, so eventually my dad did move back in, and then we got like a dog. Long story short, he brought a dog home after he heard on this Korean radio that a family and their 6th grade old son couldn't like take care of this dog because he was too busy with his studies. So he went over, didn't even talk to my mom about getting a dog in the first place because he wanted to surprise her, because in his mind, if he wanted it, she would want it too. Why not? We would all be happy together. He brought the dog home. I remember getting the phone call from my dad to our home phone, and he was like, "Hey, I have a surprise for you. Come down to the garage." And I just hear like this little like yapping, barking in the background, and I swear I thought it was a joke. I thought he was just joking around because he was like he tended to be a funny dude. So he'd like joke around. I was like, "Yeah, right, Dad, you don't have a dog." He's like, "I do. Can't you hear it?" He's like, "It's like bah, 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 bah." I thought he was making the noise, and he's like, "No, come down." So I go down there, and in this little, I think it was like a little bed or a little cage or something, a little kennel. There was this little white, little fluffy dude, literally 1 pound in my hand. And we brought him in. I was like, "Mom, look, Dad brought a dog." I'm like so happy. We eventually named him Sam, but my mom was so pissed. My mom was so pissed. He had never even talked to her about it and went out and spent, I don't know, probably like $1,200 or something on this dog. And so my mom immediately was like, "Get out of the house." And so my dad got kicked out into the balcony of the apartment. And because we're in California, it was warm. It was not a big problem. But I think he lived out there in the balcony with the dog for like 3 days because my mom was so pissed. And I remember walking out in like 11 or 12 at night, sneaking to see the dog, and my dad was just sitting there smoking a cigarette. And he was like, "What should we name him?" And we're like, you know, listing off a bunch of names. And I was like, "What about Sam?" So we eventually named him Sam. And my mom did like the dog after like a week or something, when the dog waddled over to his own pee pad. And mind you, he's 2 months old. He doesn't know what he's doing, but for some reason he knew. I think he knew he needed to be good to the alpha of the house, which is my mom. He went over to his pee pad, and like in my mom's description, she said the dog couldn't barely even walk, but he walks and stumbles over to the pee pad and pees there and walks away. And she said after that moment, she was like, "This dog is different. He's smart. I really like him." And 14 years later, we were best friends until he was 14. He passed away of like some type of cancer or something. It was really sad. I know the story kind of ended abruptly. We actually had more footage, but it got cut off and we had some technical issues, but that's okay. We're learning as we go. Thank you again for listening to some of my stories. I hope it represents some of your own experiences in some way. And really the biggest part of my show, and the reason I am vulnerable with you, even though it actually is really scary, is because I hope that this show will be a place where people can just feel safe and also feel like they can relate to some of these pieces. And in the end, I just want you to feel a little less lonely in this world and know that you're not alone. I hope that one day we can share more stories like this in the future. And I do want to let you know that we have a lot of exciting things coming ahead, like special guests, which I had promised earlier. We are in the works of recording that, and I hope to have that for you guys soon. But also just know that if you ever want to talk to anybody, or if you feel like you need to talk through some of the things that happened in your childhood, feel free to reach out to me, but also reach out to your friends, your family, your support that you have. Know that you're not alone and you can get through anything, and life is worth it. Please like, comment, share, and subscribe if you liked today's episode. And I hope that you guys join me next time for the Only Child Talk Show, where we talk about childhood and chasing dreams and all the in-betweens. See you next time.